he calls me a bow hunting purist because I don't rifle hunt. I've bow hunted since day one. Within the last year, since I've been hunting with Jason and kind of had him as my mentor, I've fallen deeper into its grasp. For one, he won't get us lost.
Yeah. Which I can't promise anyone.
This is a whole new beast. And I'm like, this rifle hunting's hard. What the heck? Couldn't see anything. Fog everywhere. My boots were filled with water. That last podcast with Aaron is kind of like, if you're not in shape and you're not ready for it, you're going to have a miserable time.
Why do you do that, Sadie? Why do you do it?
Exactly.
How dramatically does that improve someone's mood?
Oh my gosh. Instantly. Like it was like throwing my pack off, getting my crap together. I'm like, where are we sitting? Let's do this. Shoot.
See, I've scoped myself in the eyeball like 5 times. I don't know what the frick is wrong with me, but the clouds have parted. The sun comes out. You are now a hunter, Sadie.
Exactly.
You have been blessed by the hunting gods. You are successful. You are the huntress. We're like an hour and 15, I think.
Squirrel.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you have the grass is greener than syndrome guy.
We are actually the most humble guys that I know. It's kind of one of our strong points.
And I have sniffed so much Yeti that my head immediately became shaped for a flat brim.
We never say how fit we are. We just don't talk like that.
No.
The thru hiker. Basically, that is the guy hikes all day. If he's giving 110%, that's the best chance he has of getting an animal.
You know, I know a guy like that. His name's Cousin Ben Morris.
Yeah.
You don't hear us talking about how awesome we are.
No, dude, I wouldn't even mention that.
Dude, we got about 200 yards with 200 pounds, and we were like, we must be retarded. This is never going to happen. You can't, see
I don't want to see anything coming from the left and right. I have ninja type abilities. So I'm like, oh, you're going to die.
Hello, all right. You're listening to the Gritty Bowman, home of gritty bow hunting films, interviews, tall tales, and a wee bit of manly boasting.
I'm South Cox, and you're listening to The Gritty Bowman.
Hey, this is Corey Jacobson, and you're listening to The Gritty Bowman.
We bone and raised outdoors, and you've been listening to The Gritty Bowman.
There you go.
I'm Casey.
And I'm Jordan.
And you're watching
The Gritty Bowman.
If you like the show, please go to our website at grittybowman.com and subscribe to this podcast and tell your mates and pals about us. Do us a favour and please take a moment to leave us a rating or a review on iTunes or on our YouTube channel. Send your questions and podcast ideas to grittybowman@gmail.com. If you're listening to this on iTunes, you can see the video version of this podcast on our website at www.grittybowman.com.
Recording. All right, folks. Welcome to the Gritty Bowman podcast. I am here today with Sadie Kennel. And Sadie is she's going to introduce herself. She's someone that I met through social media, that I met through a Full Draw Film Tour. We kind of met just through mutual friends. And Sadie is the first female guest we've had on the podcast, and
I'm honored.
Yeah, I'm sitting here going, as I sit here and I look for people. I just want to interview people I'm interested in, people I've met or people that I know personally. I kind of am drawn to that a lot more than I am to anyone that's kind of a stranger that I've seen. And you and I have interacted a number of times and face to face hung out, and so it gives me, I don't know, I'm really interested in you and who you are and what makes you tick and why you're into hunting, what drives you. And frankly, I don't know that many other women that are into hunting. And some, I swear, that are into it aren't really into it that much. And
they just kind of want to be into it.
Kind of into it because, they're their significant others into it, so they'll tag along and they're super supportive. But then there's some girls that women especially, and more all the time, that are just genuinely hunting addicts, and I just want to get to know them and find out what makes them tick. I have 3 daughters. I'm the oldest of 8 kids, but I have 6 sisters, all younger than me, and I grew up in a house of women. My dad was a truck driver. He was gone a lot, and I was home, my sisters and I, and I was born in a largely estrogen-filled home, and so, but my sisters were outdoors with me a lot, and we did a lot of outdoor stuff. As we got older, though, I got much more into hunting, and they didn't really come along. But they're all supportive, and all their husbands go hunt with me. But I'm curious. I want to pick your brain today and kind of, see how I can get some of them more into hunting. More out there with me, with my daughters and my kids and stuff like that. So that's one thing I want to talk about today. And I wanted to get your background on some of your experiences and some of your, the things that your hunting experience that are the most meaningful to you, and then later talk about women in the hunting industry. So that's kind of what I had in mind. And with that said, Sadie, tell us about yourself.
About myself. Well, let's see. We had talked about it earlier. We figured out I've been hunting for about 7 years. I'm born and raised in Idaho. I've never left the place. Love it here. I mean, if you've ever been to Idaho, you'll know it's you never want to leave once you come here. So, and we interacted the most at the bow shoot in Cascade up there, and Cascade is a great place. So yeah, definitely Idaho is my home state, my hometown. Can never leave this place. But been hunting for 7 years, really have gotten into it the past few years. And then within the last year, since I've been hunting with Jason and kind of had him as my mentor, I've fallen deeper into its grasp.
So tell folks, for those who don't know, there's a lot who will know, who is Jason?
So Jason is my boyfriend, and he's part of Pure Elevation Productions. So if you've seen a Full Draw Film Tour, they usually have a film in that every year. So it's Jason, Tyler Crockett, Lenny Nelson, Steve Speck are all part of Pure Elevation. So he's just one of the other guys. He doesn't really like his name known that much. So he's kind of he's the shy one. So he tries to make it seem, but he's really not that shy.
Yeah. That's kind of how some of those introverted people are. They'll talk your ear off when you're alone with them, but they're a little quieter in a public setting.
Yep.
Okay, so 7 years, and in the last couple of years, I've seen you on Facebook a lot more, and I've seen some gorgeous photos of you out in the outdoors and hunting. What kind of animals have you hunted? And
let's see. Within 2015 alone, I got to chase spring bear. I did my first rifle hunt. Let's see. Kind of went elk hunting. I didn't get a chance to go for the early archery elk hunt. Jason and those guys were up in Alaska doing their moose hunt. So he ended up getting stuck in the middle of the tundra and didn't get picked up for a few more days past what they're supposed to. So that ended up feeding into the time that we were going to go on my elk hunt. So I opted out to not go on the early one and chose to do the late one, and found out that's a really hard hunt to do. So kind of got to play around with elk a little bit this year, learn a new type of elk hunting. Got my first buck this year. That was a blast, and that was probably the hardest hunt I've ever done.
So let's pick one of these. I saw some posts on Facebook of your buck hunt, and tell me about that experience from start to finish.
Start to finish.
Yeah.
That was an emotional experience. That was hard. It was, Jason kind of really committed his time to hunting with me and to getting it done. And it was kind of like a get up and go kind of thing. So that week we had left Friday night and hiked in the dark, got there to camp about midnight, decided to stop a little bit earlier than what we were planning on just because this draw we wanted to go up, it's kind of hard to navigate in the dark. So we stayed at one spot, got up early in the morning and hiked where we wanted to be in the light, just so we could glass everything on the way in. Got to a good glassing point, glassed all day long. Didn't see a dang thing. It was frustrating. Watched a guy shoot a pretty nice 4-point, and then got to watch the process of them, cutting it and packaging it and all that fun stuff and packing it out. That was the most interesting part, is to watch another group of people pack this animal out. There's 3 of them. We're just like, really? Okay, well, that's cool. So that day we finally decided to, make a move, and we moved to an area where the deer usually are, and where Jason knew they were. He kind of just pulled out all the stops for me. He held my hand completely, because I've never been on a rifle hunt. He calls me a bow hunting purist, because I don't rifle hunt. I've bow hunted since day one. I shot a bow a few times, and then I was like, hey, why not try this hunting thing? And then I had a couple people that I went hunting with, and so yeah, bow hunting has been where I've been at, has been my forte. But yeah, so this rifle hunt was a new thing, and I was like, I don't know what to do. You're gonna have to hold my hand, because this is a whole new beast. And I'm like, this rifle hunting's hard. What the heck?
Especially like when you rifle hunt, the season is cold. And there's snow and often. And it's funny, I was talking to South Cox a while back about hunting, and he's like, because there is like this attitude among bow hunters that rifle hunting's easy. If you've bow hunted before, South was like, you know what? Rifle hunting is cold, and
it is.
And it's the animals aren't running around quite as much, and they're hunkered down, and there's all these different challenges that come with rifle hunting that don't come with bow hunting.
Yeah.
So going from bow to rifle, what was your? I mean, you said it was hard, but what was hard about it?
Like you said, it was cold, and it was just a different beast in itself, because you're not necessarily from the summering habits that you would chase animals into starting to get into the fall and wintering habits. It completely changes, I found out. So those behaviors change, and the way they move around changes, and the separation of the herds, and the movement, and where they're going, and where they've been, and where they're headed. And fortunately, we got to go into this place a couple weeks before that, still it was the last couple days, or the last day of early archery season. And I got to play with a couple bulls in there. I got them to bugle back and forth. That was fun. And kind of saw where the deer hang out at when it was still a little bit warm and it was daylight. So got a feel for it then. And so the rifle hunting part was a lot different, because all of a sudden we weren't seeing the deer like we were before, and we didn't have the movement that we were seeing originally. So it was a little confusing, and Jason had pulled a trail cam from that area too, so we knew what kind of animals were in there. We knew how many animals were in there. So it was a little bit different to really not understand the different habits and behaviors that the animals are doing. So yeah,
makes sense. So you kind of had to piece that out as you went, because it's the first time.
Yep.
So, and then what?
So after that so that was the whole first day, basically just watching those people kill that one buck, and then trying to figure out what to do from there. So we decided to get to the top, and that was the original plan. And I, for some reason, was tired. We had camp on our back, so that was part of it. I don't have nearly as much weight as Jason. He's a pack horse, so he gets to take all the heavier stuff. But I still have my camp on my back and all my stuff on my back too. So I'm feeling pretty beat up. And then we go up this hill, and I'm like, we have to go up there. And he's just like, yeah, well, that's where we're camping tonight. And I'm like, but can we camp right here? And no, that wasn't an option. So we finally got to the top, and I was just like, okay, we're here. Let's stay here. And we got up there. It was windy all night, and then it was just a downpour the entire night. Woke up the next morning, we were completely socked in, just couldn't see anything, fog everywhere. My boots were filled with water.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was quite the adventure, and I was a little cranky because I was still tired, and I'd gotten 10 hours of sleep, but I was still tired, and I was sore, and I was kind of cranky. And Jason just he's learned to kind of deal with it at this point. I think he just kind of rolls his eyes and just knows that I'll perk up eventually. But I think
Just waits you out.
basically, yeah. He's just like, well, let's just like, he's kind of talks to me a little bit different once he finds out I'm cranky. Well, let's just try this for a little bit and see how this works out. Cause he's like, well, I want to go hike over there. I'm like, nope. Not doing it. I'm gonna be right here. Some mornings I'm really cranky, and some mornings I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Just depends on how hard the hike was before.
Yeah.
Thinking about that though, that last podcast with Aaron is kind of like, if you're not in shape and you're not ready for it, you're gonna have a miserable time. And that's kind of, my fitness just is up and down so much that sometimes I can go out on one of these hunts, one of these adventures, and be perfectly fine, and sometimes I'll go out and just be miserable. But that was kind of what I was feeling. I was a little miserable at this point. So
well, I think that happens like we I hear guys say, I don't need to be in shape to kill an elk, or I don't need to be in killer shape to hunt. A lot of guys kill animals without being in shape. I'll just suffer through it. But I have to say that the better condition you're in, the more enjoyable that activity is.
For sure.
I mean, it can be the difference between this is really fun to I hate every day,
Yeah.
I mean, and fitness has everything to do with those two feelings on the same exact trip under the same exact conditions.
Yep. Exactly.
But when you're in college and you're in school and, and it's like, and I've been there, like, there are certain times in my life where I've been able to put a lot of time in fitness and a lot of time, other times where I haven't. And even this year, like when I started Gritty Bowman, I was in way good shape going into it. And as soon as I started it, I'm in half the condition I was before Gritty Bowman. I was at the CrossFit gym like every day, and I was eating stellar, and I was, sleeping a lot, and then just fit. And then this happens, and it cuts into that time. And so I have to reprioritize and go, okay, what's the most important thing for me? And my fitness and my health is right up there, very high on that list. So I dive back in it and get back on track and stuff. But but big motivation for me is hunting in the mountains. Like, I know.
Oh, for sure.
I love that activity. So I'm like, I don't want to be sucking wind, and dying and not being able to perform. So it pushes me during this time of year when I'm not hunting to keep pushing,
Yeah. No, that's 100%. Some weeks I'm like, yeah, I get on it, and I get my workouts in and I eat good, and then other weeks I'm just like, whatever. I just give me tacos and beer, and I'm just gonna sit on the couch tonight. I don't even care.
Yeah.
But most of the time, I mean, since I've been with Jason, it's like our exercise, our workouts, our hiking, are going into the mountains and doing. I mean, he's king of hiking. He can out hike me. Of course, he can out-hike most of the people I know, and I have a hard time keeping up with him. And the places he has taken me would make most men roll their eyes.
Yeah.
And the entire time, though, I'm like, I remember one trip, I was literally in tears, just like sitting on the side of the mountain crying because I was so miserable and hurting, and it just sucked so bad.
Why do you do that, Sadie? Why do you do it?
Exactly. But I love doing it. I absolutely love like the getting to the top is one of the, and I'd never summited it, like, even a little mountain before, like just getting to the top of any kind of steep mountain. I'd never done it before. And it was that same trip, and the first time, and I stood up there and I was like, this is the first time I've stood on top of a mountain like this. And it was awesome, but it was probably the most brutal one I've ever been on. And our first official like date, I guess you could call it, was a hunting trip. And he had never hunted with a woman before. And so that was pretty interesting because he wasn't sure what to expect. I wasn't sure what to expect. Yeah. And then we go into some of the toughest country in this area to go do this hunt. I'm just like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to expect. And I've had the worst asthma all my life. And so, I'm huffing, puffing up and down these hills, and it's really hard. And anymore, it's gotten better. It's gotten to the point where I'm not wheezing so much, and I'm not like stopping and just like, hold on for like 10 minutes. I can't breathe kind of thing. Like our first hunt to when we go out now, it's significantly better, but I still can't keep up with that, man. I don't think I'll ever be able to.
Would you have gone on these types of hunts without Jason? How much of this drive to go on like a backcountry type hunt and some of these strenuous physical, hunts are because of that relationship?
I think a lot of it has to do with the relationship. I think the fact that I trust him so much kind of makes it a little bit easier to go on these trips, because I think trust has a lot to do with that, with some of the long adventures we go on, with some of the hunts that we go on, that trust that we have, or the trust that I have for him, knowing that, for one, he won't get us lost.
Yeah.
Um,
Which
and
I can't promise anyone.
Yeah, no, definitely not. But I mean, he knows enough of this country like the back of his hands that I know he won't get us lost. And I know that if anything bad happens, he can probably carry me out on his back, because, you know, he can carry deer that are heavier than me out on his back. So I have the most faith in him for that.
Yeah.
So I think it's mostly just the trust. But I've always wanted to do something like that. You know, I've always wanted to do a backpack hunt. I've always wanted to go, you know, hike into the backcountry and sleep overnight. And the first time doing that was on a bear hunt, and that was with him. But I think just the motivation he has and the drive he has to do it kind of feeds into me a little bit, and then I want to do it, and his constant go kind of feeds into me. And he always tells me, he's like, I know you have no quit, but do you need to stop? And I'm like, nope, let's go.
All right, that's pretty cool. So
Yeah.
so back to the buck hunt.
Yeah, definitely.
So you're hiking along. And you're a little cranky this morning.
A little bit. So my boots filled with water, and I'm just like, I don't even know. I don't think it helps that the way we've learned to sleep well while we're backpacking is to take sleep aids. So we do like PMs, like ibuprofen PMs, and that's what we do. And sometimes if I'm really tired and I take like a little bit too much, you know, if I take like a whole PM instead of a half of PM, I'll be a little groggy and cranky in the morning. So I think that feeds into a little bit of it.
Yeah.
But my boot's wet, and he gets the jetboil out, and they have an open flame on them. And so he's trying to dry out my boot with the open flame on the jetboil, and that's not working. And finally he just like pulls out his dry sack that he has for a sleeping bag. He's like, here, stick your foot in this. And I'm just like, I don't want to do that. That's stupid. And he's like, well, we're not hiking. Just we'll go walk over here and we'll sit down and drink our coffee. So I finally get out of the tent. I shove my foot in this dry bag, put it in my boot. I have my jetboil full of coffee, and I'm just like dragging my feet over to the spot, and it's just foggy, and I'm like, whatever, I don't even care. And he's like, well, let's just go over here and glass. So I'm like, okay. So we're walking to the spot where he wants to glass at, coffee in hand and everything. And we get there, and I kind of see this weird silhouette. I thought it was a tree, and turns out it wasn't a tree. It was deer. He's like, did you see that deer? I'm like, oh, that's what that was. Cause we didn't see any. We saw that one that got shot, and that was it. So the fact that we were even seeing a deer first off in the morning was awesome.
And tell me, how dramatically does that improve someone's mood?
Oh my gosh. Instantly. Like, it was like throwing my pack off, getting my crap together. I'm like, where are we sitting? Let's do this. And so he's like, we kind of have this built-in blind, this tree, and it's a pretty steep angle off, or a steep slope off of the top of this. So we see him, and we nestle down behind this tree, and perfect rest for the gun, everything. So it played out really well. So we sit there and watch him for a second. And as we're settling in, that buck stands up, and then another one ends up walking over to go mess with him, and they end up sparring and playing and doing whatever. They're both pretty young, but they're decent deer, both of them are. And it was the last day, and we hadn't seen anything the entire day before, so it was pretty exciting. And I look at him, and I'm like, which one should I shoot? And he's just like, well, shoot the 4-point, duh. And I'm like, okay. And so he's behind me, ranging it for me, and he's coaching me, because I'm really nervous. It's with a rifle, and I'm like, am I good? And I'm asking him, I'm like, and I felt like I was too close to the scope, because there's always those stories of people, they go out on their first rifle hunt and they get scoped in the face, and I'm like, does it look like I'm too close to the scope? Because it was it was kind of at an angle, and he was just like, nope, it looks good. And he's like, and I look at him like, can I shoot? And he's like, yeah. Shoot.
See, I've scoped myself in the eyeball like 5 times. It's like, I don't know what the frick is wrong with me, and it always happens right when I'm shooting the animal. Never at practice.
Just too excited.
Yeah. Now it hasn't happened in a long time, but I've had my share of scoped eyes, and Anthony's had his too. So, yeah.
I'm sure my turn's going to come up at some point, but we'll see. Hopefully, as long as I keep asking, am I good?
Well, I think often it comes from shooting a rifle that's not yours, or one that is set up for Like one time we were shooting his daughter's rifle because we were in the. It was sighted in well and everything. Anyway, it wasn't the best setup, but so.
Oh, ouch! Yeah, and I was shooting his rifle, so it's a little big on me too.
Yeah.
But yeah, he kind of spoiled me on that hunt. But I was I was sitting there. I was asking him like, does it look good? Am I okay? I was like, does my positioning look good? I was like, do I look like I'm in a good position to shoot? Because I don't know. And I think I shot his rifle we went out a couple times and shot it beforehand, but and I've shot rifles before, but I've never hunted with one. So completely different setting, and everything has to be kind of perfect, and I'm not sure what to expect. So
you don't want to cause undue injury or anything to an animal either, and so you're just checking for little and Jason's probably going, you got it already. Let's do this thing.
He was just like, and I was like, okay, am I good? He's like, yeah, shoot. And I was like, all right. And then right after I asked, I squeezed the trigger and made a perfect shot and dropped him in his tracks, and he went about 20 yards and piled up.
So in the heat of that moment, before we get to the next part, when you're sitting there and you're a little concerned and you're talking to Jason, does his calmness, does that bother you or does that help you?
No, it actually helps me, because I think if he were to be riled up, I'm like, okay, well, I know you're excited too, but like, am I doing what I'm supposed to do here? I think just his calmness of being like, yeah, you're good, and you're good to go, look good, it's fine, and he told me a couple times, whenever you're ready, take your time, because that's what I was most nervous about, is having to throw that rifle up there and just take a shot. And he said, I won't put you in a position that you'll have to rush on. We'll put you in a position where you can take your time and where you can set up. And so, and it was true. It worked out that way. So
how did you feel then? I mean, as soon as you see it drop, I mean, what were the emotions that you felt?
I know. It was the most emotional experience I've ever had. And I've shot animals before, and that was nothing new, but it's different experience between shooting them with a bow and with a rifle. And I've gotten a little emotional before with my bow, and I've gotten a cow and a doe before with my bow. So I think just all the emotions of how hard the hike was in there, because I think at that point, just the hike in there, it took us about 5.5 miles to get to that point, and it was rough country, and I was tired, and it was the first rifle hunt, and just and it all played out perfect. I don't think that shot could have been more perfect, because it was a downhill angle shot, and I just dropped him in his tracks, and it was perfect. Everything was perfect, but I wasn't sure, and I was sitting there, and I was just like, I don't even know what to do right now, and I was just like, I was shaking. I never understood like the shaking and the excitedness that people get, but I was actually shaking, and I was crying, and Jason pulled his phone out and he snapped a picture of me, and I'm bawling. I have tears running down my face. I was like, I don't know what's happening to me right now.
So, I mean, when you see it drop with a rifle, it's kind of done. It's like so instantaneous. Like with a bow, you're like, I don't want to get too excited yet. I don't know if it's really done or not, because they don't just fall over usually,
That's kind of how it seemed, was because I mean, every time with the bow, you're grabbing another arrow, knocking it, and getting ready to draw again on it when you can, and that, just seeing that happen, and I mean, seeing him drop, he rolled down the hill and stopped, and that was just kind of the thing where I was just like, he's done, because my thing is I've seen people shoot animals, and the animals not die right away, and I can't do that. I can't watch that. That's hard. I don't know many people who can, but I literally have to look away. Like, somebody else has to be there with me, because I'm being the woman part of it, and I can't watch it. It's kind of a hard thing for me to grasp. Like, I understand what's going on, and I'm okay with it to an extent, and I know that's the process of doing this and of hunting, but it's still an emotional thing to where I can't watch it. So just the fact that it was instant, and it was instantaneous, like, that was a lot better of a feeling.
And I do think that there's some generalities, like with men to women, where sometimes it does seem like more women are sensitive to the suffering or the pain or that than some men are. But I have two daughters. I have three daughters, but there's
however many it is now.
But there's these two that I'm about to talk about. There's one daughter who like we catch fish, and she's like, "Can we let it go? Can we let it go? You know, can I like to let him go?" And and I have another daughter who's like, let's kill it and eat it for dinner. And then one is like, I just want to let it go, and the other one's like, let's pop its eye out, you know, and so you have these two personalities where they're just different, and one is really sensitive to just a very empathetic and sensitive person toward others and animals, just super sensitive and sweet. And my other daughter is also kind and patient and generous, but she's also a lot tougher and less sensitive toward, you know, the suffering of another animal. She's like, well, we got to get this done so we can eat it, you know, and it's
that's great. I'm
real
kind of both of
practical.
those. Yeah. No, I'm definitely both of those things. So I'm like the empathetic and the sensitive, but I'm also the, you know, let's kill it and eat it. You know, let's pop its eye out. Like, I think when we were caping my deer, and when we got down to getting the face and everything, like we were getting the eyeballs out and stuff, and I'm like, can I do it? And like, you know, poking your finger in there. I'm just like, I'm that kind of person, but at the same time, you know, if you think a little too much about it and you realize what you're actually doing, you're just like, oh well, that's a little bit harder.
Well, don't you think too, like, I'd be a liar if I said I didn't cry after I shot an animal.
I think everybody does. I don't know a person who doesn't.
I mean, I think there are some people who say, I heard Steven Ranella just the other day, I think it was on that last podcast he did, where he's like, you know, I'm just not one of those guys. I never have, but I was eating stuff, you know, since I was like a tiny kid. Some people who, like myself, I don't think I killed my first animal until, you know, much later in life. And in that experience, I think, just not having been part of that, not a farmer or anything else, it was a bit of a shock to the system. And I think you're right. I think a lot of people do. But there are times where I've had both, like in the same season. One season I'm like, yeah, and I'm fist pumping and doing the moonwalk, you know. And then another time I'm like, you know, sensitive and near tears, and like really feel like a sense of, you know, some sense of loss that this animal's life is now done, you know, but grateful, and this overwhelming sense of gratitude for the opportunity and that it happened. It's like I can feel both. It's not because I'm a man or a woman. I just feel, I feel emotion, and it depends somewhat on what led up to that.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think that's the biggest thing, because I mean, my doe last year with my bow, we were looking for elk, and I saw these herd of doe, and we were on a four-wheeler, and I got off the four-wheeler and walked to her, and I still felt emotion, and I still was kind of a little wound up about it, but it wasn't as emotional as leading up to this rifle hunt. I guess there was more to it. There was more of myself that I had given to it and that I'd put in it, and I worked so hard to get to that point. And, you know, most people would be like, yeah, no big deal. But it was really, really hard, steep country. And yeah, I think the emotions and what leads up to it, like you're saying, has the biggest thing to do with it.
How much of that do you think was a result of just how hard it was to accomplish what you did and to have done it, versus the emotion of, you know, I just killed an animal, you know?
I think it was both, like, equally. I think it was the work I put. I don't think the emotions came of the work I put in till later on, because it was throughout that entire thing, it was just like wave after wave after wave of emotions, and it was different emotions every time, and like I would get teary-eyed differently every time. And it was, you know, there was right after the shot, it was kind of like a relief partnered with like the fact that I just taken another animal's life. I mean, that always gets me no matter what. You know, my grandpa was a farmer, and he had a bunch of cows, he had cattle, and that's what he did. So, you know, I've been around it, I'm used to it, but it was still that kind of, it was me doing it that time, and it was different then. So I'm definitely one to apparently play with the emotions, and I always wondered how that would be, because I never got to experience that before. So I always wondered, I thought to myself a few times, will I be emotional? Will I be like you know, because some guys are fist pumpers because they're excited, you know, they just accomplish that. And I've never understood that. I think it's kind of hokey.
Yeah.
But I mean, I understand, like, if you're excited and it's accomplishment and that's what comes out, that's what comes out. And guys are different creatures, you know, if fist pumping is just kind of something that they do, you know, like it's,
I got bigger biceps than you.
yeah, exactly.
I mean,
Yeah. I mean, I've seen pictures of guys to where like they're in the picture, they're holding the deer in like fist pumping motion. And I'm just like, are you flexing? What is this? But I think it was just like a mix of like excitement and accomplishment, relief, taking a life, and the fact that Jason was there too, I think was a huge thing for me too, and I think that was big for him because we were both kind of emotional after that, and we were both kind of just like taken back by the fact that just happened, and that happened in that setting. And and it was really, I think the coolest part of it to play in even more with the emotions was right after the shot and right after it happened, the fog and the clouds broke and the sun came through right at that moment. And I think that kind of played more into it. So, you know, just all this stuff, like it was like the setup for like a perfect movie, you know?
Right. Like all this, it's like the clouds have parted, the sun comes out. You are now a hunter, Sadie.
Exactly.
You have been blessed by the hunting gods. You are successful. You are the huntress. It's just
That's
like
what it felt like, for sure.
So, like when you know, I don't know how many other women hunters you know. I assume that you know, you do know some, and I mean, what is there, like, do you notice some commonalities like between women who hunt and men? Like, what are the differences that you see between the two, women and men hunters?
It depends on what kind of women hunters we're talking about.
Okay.
I mean, there's like, who do I want to use here? There's like the women that are like back east hunters, like the Tiffanys and you know, to where they got their starts,
like the
whitetails, yeah, and that kind of thing. There's that type of female hunter to where, you know, that's a completely different world, and I don't quite understand it because being more exposed to social media standpoint and a lot more women coming on the scene and that do that, I understand it, but I don't quite understand it to the point where I'm not sure how one can sit in a tree stand and hunt like it. Like I would probably go insane. Like I'm like, I need to do something. I need to go. Like how does this even work? How do you sit here and do this? But you know, and I understand that that's how it's done. That's what they do. But then there's like, you know, the Western states where you have like the Amanda Caldwells and I can't even think of them. Jana,
Waller.
you know, Jana Waller,
Skullbound TV.
Yeah, Skullbound, you know, and all these other people who kind of have this name that, you know, they definitely get out there and they put their work in. Christy's probably one of them, to where she's gotten out there and she's put her work in. She's hiked her miles, and you know,
Christy Titus.
And they've gone out there and they've kind of done the thing to where they've
a lot of backpacking, a lot of hunting.
They've put in the miles,
done in the shoe leather.
Yeah, exactly, and they've they understand like truly what it means to work for an animal and truly what it means to get out there and to make it happen necessarily, rather than just it happening for you.
I do think there's a big difference between, you know, Western and Eastern style hunting when you're talking about tree stands and stuff. I will say, because I hunt a lot of blacktails using whitetail tactics, you know, in a tree stand, that I think sometimes Western hunters, we as Western hunters, we can judge those Eastern guys and be like, it's easy. You know?
It's definitely not easy.
and it can seem easy, but I think in many ways it is. Like, you don't have to be very physically fit to get it done, but you do have to be able to sit still in the freezing cold, for hours on end, day after day, week upon week, if you want to shoot that monster cagey whitetail, you know. I think that it's hard, but in a much different way.
Yeah,
than it is.
It's a mental toughness that it takes to do that kind of stuff. It's definitely mental,
but it's also mental too, like being able to hike, get soaking wet, you know, like you said, like you know, get deep into the country. You know, when I see them, like Tiffany Lakowski put down a whitetail, they cruise out there in their like a UTV vehicle and throw it in the back and drive it home, you know?
Yeah.
Like there ain't none of that where you're at. It's like,
no,
that goes on your back and you're packing it out. And that's so they're just different. I would say though that I know what you mean. Like you probably relate a lot more to the Jana Wallers than you do and the Christies than you do, you know, some of the whitetail kind of crowd.
No, I definitely do. I think it's just because I understand what they've gone through and what they've seen and kind of what they have to work for to get to it.
You've done the same thing.
Yeah, but as far as like the eastern hunting and the whitetail stamp, and I know not all eastern hunting is like that. I know that they get out there and they still have to hike some hills. They still have to put their boots to the ground and do some work. But specifically, there's a I guess there's like a basis over there for the women that the women that do this. It's an easier thing for a lot of these women to be able to do on that standpoint. And so, if you have a tree stand, you have some property, and you can hunt, then you can hunt. And I think
you're celebrated almost.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, hey, she hunts. She's the my hot girl next door, and
Exactly.
she likes to hunt, and she'll climb in the tree stand with me, and we can shoot some arrows. We'll shut up the ground blind, and it's kind of this sort of it's just a celebrated kind of thing. Here, it's like, I got this girl I got to drag up on this elk hunt that can't quite, I don't know what I'm going to do with her back there, but she wants to go.
Basically.
I think there's that sort of, it's sort of like the attitude like with women in the military, which I kind of touched on with you earlier offline, that there's, can women in the military do the same thing that men can? And some of this stuff, hiking these mountains straight down with a heavy packing out a heavy load of meat after you're 5 miles in, it's a physically demanding activity, and there's just no way around it. And so I think definitely on the western side, seeing women do that activity, there's less of it, a lot less of it. And I don't know if it's because it's just not an activity that women are really drawn to, or if it's that men have kind of shut them out in a way, haven't included them, right? We just kind of are like, we're just assuming you don't want to go, or we're sort of discouraging it subconsciously. Because I was telling you, like, sometimes I sit there and I say, I'll be like with my buddies, like, dude, man up, grow a pair, let's go. Those are like sexist male terms, right? Like, I'm not saying that to my daughter.
I'm sorry, but I can't do those things.
Yeah, totally. I'm like, I can't tell her to grow a pair. It's not going to happen. And so
sacking up is not a thing that I can do.
Right. And so when I use terms like that, I realize that I am, I'm trying to, I try to be sensitive to that, because instead I'm like, I tell my daughters, get tough, you can do this. But I don't use terms like I do with the Boy Scouts. Like, are you a sissy? What are you, a girl? and I say that stuff, right? Meaning as if a girl is less than a man.
Yeah.
And I catch myself doing that and trying to backtrack and then not do it as much, because I know lots of women, especially where I go to the CrossFit gym, that can outlift and outdo things that a lot of guys I know that I hunt with can't do. That I personally know. And so it's no longer for me. I have to recognize that. It's just that the women that can do that sort of stuff are just fewer.
Yeah. Oh, way fewer. I think over here, like on this side, the Western states and the Western hunting, it's more of it's not necessarily people are doing it and women are doing it for attention and to have a face out there and to say that they're, I hunt too.
For self-promotion.
I think you have to want it to do it here. I think you have to like it, and you truly have to want to be out there. And I struggle with that sometimes. I do truly want to be out there, but it's more in a sense that I'm sometimes miserable when I'm out there because I haven't quite figured out what works best for me yet. And I'm slowly, within the last year, I'm slowly figuring out what works best for me. And, even hiking, like what my pace is and what pace I can go at and still be consistent and still have that, that drive and that motivation to keep going and not just be exhausted because I'm exerting so much energy just hiking. Just little things like that. I've learned that I do it differently than Jason does, and I do it differently than other men will do.
Well, and
I can out hike men too. I mean, I've gone hunting with friends and I can out hike some of the men, but then I go out with people like Jason and I can't even keep up with the guy, and he has to like sit there and he's like, well, I'm going to run up here and I'm going to go glass this and I'll come back down and meet you. Okay. And I'm just like, whatever, go. It's all you.
Well, we were talking about this offline and I was kind of just picking your brain, and I was asking you, who in the hunting industry or in the hunting world, is there like a personality that you're really drawn to or that you really like, or what kind of hunting show have you watched or do you relate to or do you like, or that has the messages that you value and so forth, and I'm asking you some of these questions. Well, what I find interesting about your responses, and you can go ahead and share them here in just a minute with everybody listening, but I've seen you on Facebook and in social media and in those settings calmly and but forcefully say, I don't like this behavior about this, or like this attitude, like if it's just a forked horn, then it's not worthy of posting on Facebook. Kind of like you'll reset some boundaries with people, like saying, look, I don't know why you hunt, but this is why I hunt, and I think this is a more valuable reason for hunting, and I like that.
Yeah, I think so many people have lost touch of why they do. I think some people do it for attention. Yes, definitely. I think some people do it for just the fact that they can get free stuff and the fact that everybody pays attention to them. But I do think there's people out there who do have the true roots in it and who do truly understand it. Honestly, if I could just go out there to be out there, I will pack my bow around all day long. If I can just be there, if I can just see the stuff that I get to see while I'm out there, if I can just do the thing, because it's really cool to say, yeah, I hiked there. Yeah, I went there. Yeah, I hiked up to the top of that. Yeah, I got to see that sunrise. Yeah, I got to see this there's so many cool things you get to see while you're out there that I personally think that that's better. And I take more of that in than I do anything else. Like I don't get too wound up over it. And so, like you said, I kind of put people in their place a little bit. I think just those memes that I saw going around of people saying something about going out hunting and all you did was take pictures, or you never post a you go out hunting and never post a picture of your
making fun of
deer
bow
or whatever.
hikers,
exactly.
Bow hunters
And I'm a bow hiker. Screw it. Like I don't. I'm pretty sure I've taken my bow out and taken it on a hike more times than I've ever killed an animal. Right. But that's just and that's a learning process too. But I don't think anybody should ever ridicule anybody else for actually going out and enjoying it. And I think hunting is its own thing to each person. So if you're the trophy hunter that just wants to go out every time and kill something, but it's so unlikely that you're going to go out every single time you go out hunting and kill something. I respect the people that get out there and go all the time and are able to enjoy it and then share their experiences. My whole purpose of sharing anything on social media at all is just the fact that I know there's people out there who don't get to see what I get to see and don't get to experience that. And I want to share it in my purest form that I've seen it in.
Yeah.
And so if I can share it like that and I can share that with other people and they can be like, wow, that exists, that's out there, that stuff actually happens. Dude, I think that's the coolest thing ever.
I think the cannibalism that goes on inside the hunting community can be downright disturbing sometimes.
It is.
It's like, and it comes back down to the ego thing. Like, I'm better than you. And sometimes my response to a post that I see is, just next time, just say, I'm a better person than you. Just type it out. Just type that out. That's what you're saying,
Yeah, basically. That's what it reads out as.
And what happens, I see, like the other day, there was one about it. There was a guy who stalked up on this deer and he shot it with his bow and he was on the side of the road. Obviously, he was walking down a road or driving down a road, saw a deer, got out, went off the road, legally harvested this deer. The amount of hate he got from other hunters about how he did that instead of hiking up the mountain 15 miles, and and you get a lot of that Western hunter to Eastern hunter bias. Like, oh, you shot it from a tree stand, dude. That's not real hunting. Real men strap on a pack and hike 10 miles and kill it.
That's not true at all, honestly. Like I've had so many opinions of my own change just through my own experiences, but that's not true.
But that's what happens, right? Like we even fall into it, and people were disappointed because it wasn't fair chase enough, or it was too easy to shoot it because it was off the side of the road, or it was too young. It wasn't old enough. It was just a button buck. You should hunt. They're dumb as a rock and they're too easy to kill. And it's like we all start at different levels. A legal harvest is a legal harvest. If you follow the law and you do it within the boundaries of the law, some people hunt just to get meat. Look, I don't have any time, but I want organic meat, so I'm driving down the road and I'm just going to shoot whatever I get a chance at. And my goal is to spend the least amount of time hunting as possible this season.
I think that's everybody's goal for the most part is, the faster you can get it done, the faster. I mean, if
for
hunters
some people, I think other people,
if hunters are the ones that the meat getters, I guess, are the ones that love to go out there. They just want to get that meat and get it in their freezer. And then there's some people who really like spending the time outdoors. And I'm kind of both of those. I actually opted out on really even trying to fill the freezer with meat. I could have shot a cow or a spike on this late elk hunt that we had, but I was like, well, why not try to chase a bull, because it's going to make it harder, it's going to be less likely, and if I get something, then I'm going to have to have worked my ass off for it, and it's going to be worth it. But the fact that I didn't really push for getting that meat in the freezer, because Jason went to Alaska and shot a moose. We honestly don't need the meat. The two of us can't eat that much meat. Right. And we have a lot of moose coming, and we both shot deer this year. So I kind of felt bad because we found a spike and we were like, yeah, we can go get that. And I was just like, I kind of played with it for a while. And then I kind of got to the point where I felt a little guilty, and I'm like, I can't go shoot that spike just for meat when we don't necessarily need the meat.
It's like I heard Ranella say, his attitude about quote unquote trophy hunting changes dramatically depending on whether he's in a meat crisis or not. Mm-hmm. I've been like that my whole life. If my meat freezer is full of meat, then I'm out there looking for like a spectacular animal because I don't really need it or not need it at that moment. I can take it or leave it. But when the freezer's empty, I'm kind of ready to shoot whatever is there because the food is so important to me. Yep. Having that meat in the freezer is such a big deal, part of my life, my lifestyle, that I don't like that to go without. So, the other thing I heard recently by Nick Best, I just did a podcast with him, and he lives here. He's a college student, and just shot this giant bull in Oregon, and we were talking, and he said, I like to call it, I don't know if he got this term from somewhere else or not, but he said, I like to call it adventure hunting instead of trophy hunting.
That's awesome.
Because he's like, it's really an adventure. Like, I'm looking for the adventure, not. And so if I were to shoot, he had a raffle tag. He's like, I could have shot a bull every day I went. My hunt would be over. Yeah. But I'm looking for an adventure, and so adventure hunting means I'm pushing that much farther, that much deeper, that much harder to try to find this certain level of animal, so that I have a different adventure. But certainly there are times where the adventure is simply just getting some meat for the freezer. That's the extent of it. And I kind of like the term adventure hunting instead of trophy hunting.
No, I like that too, because I don't think everybody's necessarily a trophy hunter. I think that's just the only term that we've had to use. But adventure hunting is probably one of the better ones I've heard.
I liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after you shoot this buck, back on that, and you packed it out.
Hard pack out. It was the hardest pack out I've ever done.
Once you. There's a lot of people who have been hunting a lot, and they've also killed animals, but they had a horse or they were within a short distance.
Yeah.
When you have to actually pack meat out, and you have to pack it out a long way, that's night and day. Especially when it's steep country. Packing meat is serious work.
It's such serious work. And I've packed meat before, and I've packed meat in a crappy pack before, but it wasn't that as far, and it wasn't as hard.
Yeah.
But this time it was, I don't even remember what we weighed it out to be. It was well over 60 pounds, I think, with camp gear and meat, and I had the head and the cape and everything else because he had a beautiful cape, so I couldn't let myself leave that on the hill. Yeah. So, and then Jason, being the pack horse he is, then he takes, you know, the rest of the camp gear and the rifle and the spotting scope and the tripod and then the rest of the meat. And I'm just like, if you can carry it, sure. You know, if you need me to take some, I'll take some more. So it ended up being, we started about 9,000 feet and dropped down to about 5,200 feet. Yeah. Wow. So it was just all downhill. That's all it was. It was just, and that's a different beast in itself. Is just straight downhill the whole way. I mean, I don't think I've ever felt my legs give up like that. And the first part of it was all just sandy hillsides, and that was it.
Oh, you know, absolutely. Downhill hiking. If you're not conditioned for that, because a lot of friends I know, they'll do like stairs and stuff, and they'll go
up,
and they'll even go downstairs. But downstairs is a whole different ballgame than going down a steep incline. Yeah, your feet are shaped different. You know, there's no steps. You're just going downstairs. It's like flat. You know, from one flat surface to the next. When you're on a slope the whole time, you're just using muscles that are different. And if you don't train for that.
I don't know how, like, and it's really hard to train for that too. I mean, that's a lot of hiking, and that was, you know, my feet and my ankles and my calves hurt. I couldn't walk right for 4 days after that. My calves were so bad. Like, I had to walk flat-footed everywhere I went just because I couldn't actually like flex.
So how do you feel about, I mean, are you eager to do it again?
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, it was kind of funny in the middle of the pack out, the first part of the pack out, Jason, on the really slick stuff, we both had a trekking pole, and it got to the point where I couldn't get my feet under me fast enough with how the sand was moving. And so he's like, I hope nobody's watching, because he came and he was holding my hand as we were going across this. He's like, nobody better be watching this. He's like, I'm going to look like such a sissy. But he was trying to keep me upright and help me get this deer out. And you know, I fell a couple times. There's a couple times where I was just like miserable, and he would look back and he's just like, you look like you were about to fall over and die, you know. But I was determined though, you know. And he's like, do you want me to take some of the meat? And I'm like, no, I got it. I will do this. This is my own kill. This is my own deer. I will do this. I will pack it out. Yeah. And so we finally got down to the point where it was getting a little bit easier, and we were getting closer and closer and closer. And you know, you get in that distance of where you know you're close to the truck, and you're just like, you feel like you're sprinting, probably not moving any faster than I really was. But it was such a different experience. It was such a cool experience too, that intense of an experience. Because I've packed out meat, you know, a few times. Not even my own animals. I've helped other people pack out meat plenty of times, and just a different beast in itself.
My daughter went to this year. She went to hunter safety. Got her hunter safety certificate, bought her elk tag and stuff, and we went out scouting and then hunting. When we went out scouting, we covered some serious country, and we backpacked, and she carried a backpack. She had her own sleeping bag, all her gear, and you know, we roasted marshmallows at night and had little fires and hung out, and then got up early in the morning and sat in blinds during the season and stuff, and saw some things. She didn't get a chance at an elk. She had a couple of opportunities. They didn't hold still long enough for her to actually, you know, make a good shot. But we got into those moments, and it was just really awesome for her, and a sense of accomplishment. Like, it changed her. Like, after she got done, she comes back from that trip, and she's like, I hunted in the wilderness with my dad. I'm 12. You know, I started a fire. You know, I cooked dinner. I slept in the stars. You know, I hiked. I covered mountains and hills. I swam in a creek, you know, and bathed in the freezing ice cold mountain water, and you know, just all these experiences, right? And they come back, and I really feel like it just changes them. And my question to you is, how has hunting changed you?
It's connected me more on it. Like, I think she felt like her feeling, just the change in her, you know, just being more connected, and knowing that, for one, you can accomplish something like that. Because seeing these people, like, you know, you see all these adventure stories of these guys who backpacked in the wilderness for so many days, and, you know, you're like, what? That's crazy. I can never do that. But if you even go do it for a couple days, like, I'm not a fan of the dark and, you know, the middle of nowhere. And I'm not sure of anybody who is, unless you've done it a lot. And now it doesn't bother me as bad as it used to. You know, I can get out of the tent in the middle of the night and be okay. But But it used to be, when I first started doing it, it would kind of freak me and creep me out a little bit because I don't know what's around me. I don't know what's there. But, just the sense that, I can accomplish something like that and I can survive and I can fend for myself. And I can get to that point where I can feel comfortable being in the middle, kind of in the middle of nowhere, being far enough away from anything that it would be a disaster if something were to happen.
So does that change how you feel when you're in school or when you're at work or when you're in other places, like when you're out of the wilderness?
Changed. Yeah, my mindset's changed for sure. Like it's been something where I know I can persevere easier and better. I know I'm a stronger person for it mentally, I guess, necessarily, because I've had to take myself through some situations, like crying on the side of a mountain to know that I can pull myself up by my bootstraps and keep going and take myself back out of a bad situation, kind of thing. I actually blew up my knee elk hunting one year a while ago, and I was actually at the top of the hill doing it, and I had to hike out of there, and that was probably the hardest thing I'd ever done because by the time I got back to the truck, like any type of movement, any type of like anything on my knee, it was the worst pain I'd ever felt, and I ended up having surgery on it. So
Jeez.
it was, it going through something like that and knowing that I can like push through anything like that, it definitely changes your mindset. You feel stronger, you feel more accomplished, you feel, I think the sense of that everything's handed to us so easily now, we get the sense that we're, not as strong once you're put in those kind of situations. Once something isn't easy for a lot of people nowadays, it's so easy to give up. We have everything on our smartphones. We have everything's at our fingertips now. And once it gets hard and once we have to figure out something for ourselves, it makes it a lot harder. And I'm still learning. I don't dare adventure off by myself quite yet. I'm still pretty nervous and still pretty timid about that. And Jason kind of holds my hand through a lot of situations that I'm not comfortable with, but he kind of steps back to the point where he still lets me kind of figure it out on my own enough, and to where he'll be there and I can watch him, but he's still not like in my face shoving stuff down my throat of what I need to. He kind of just lets me do my own thing and follow along in his footsteps, type of thing.
Yeah, I think it just builds character in a way that and gives you that when you. I remember the first time I killed it, the first elk I killed, and I had no idea what I was doing, and it was a fiasco. And we finally got the meat out. It was freezing cold. We got the meat home, put it in the freezer. I remember feeling such a huge sense of accomplishment, going out in the woods, no idea, killing an elk, bringing it home, and then I'm at work the next week, and some guy is talking to me about something work related, I don't remember, and busting my chops. And I remember sitting there going, dude, this is nothing. I just froze my butt off. I just killed an elk and packed it out and gutted it, and hundreds of pounds off a mountain, brought it home. I'm feeding my family with it. This is like, this thing here, this thing you're heaping on me, it's nothing. I got this. You know, it's just, there's just that feeling, and you just handle things. It's just like, I just handle it. I've been in tougher situations, and so I think it can really build character.
Yeah, and I'm slowly learning that. I've always been a creature of like needing everything to be perfect, and I'm slowly getting to the point where the perfectionist in me is letting go a little bit, because I'm learning that not everything can be perfect all the time, and especially when you're in the middle of nowhere. And I think we've forgotten fuel for our jetboils, or we've forgotten this, or we've forgotten that kind of thing, and sometimes we remember it in the middle of driving, and Jason just gives me a response of, oh, well, we'll figure it out. I'm just like, what do you mean we'll figure it out? How are we going to figure it out?
Right.
But usually, I mean, we figure it out, and he knows. He knows well enough now, and he's done this for so long, and he's done it, in the worst conditions, and he's forgotten so many things, and he's made it. So I think just that it goes back to that trust that I have in him, that everything will be okay.
That's awesome. All right, before I let you go, I have one other question that I really want to get at. And that is, what do you recommend for me to get my daughters and my wife into hunting? What are some do's and don'ts as I introduce them? Because, I want them to really take to it, you
Yeah.
know. And I realize some people just are just driven, and some are not. But if it's in there, I want to blow that I want to light that spark into a bonfire.
Yeah. I think the go slow thing with women is the biggest thing, because I think first they need to be comfortable with the thought of they might actually kill something. And if they're not okay with that thought, I think they might need to assess why not. You know, if it's just because they're taking another animal's life, they kind of need to assess why they're emotional about that, because I get emotional about that. And I also understand that that's just the cycle. You know, humans are the top of the food chain, clearly. And fortunately, we're smart enough to give ourselves our own weapons. But I think we need to understand that it goes back to that kind of sense, that it's something that we do for ourselves. And if you can't be okay with that, it might not be something that you want to do. But if you can get past that, then kind of go slow into it. You know, if they've never been backpacking before, go on like, you know, a short backpacking trip somewhere. My first backpacking trip was an 18-mile 2-day trip that we did on a bear hunt. So that was a little bit different. But I also have, you know, I don't have much quit, and I love that kind of stuff. The more difficult it is, the more I like to push myself, and I think the more accomplished I feel, the cooler I think I am, I guess. I'm so badass now. But I think just the get them used to the aspects of it, the hiking, and what it's gonna be like, you know, if you need to pack stuff around, like, you know, and what you need in your pack, and then if things happen, you know, like forgetting stuff, you know, I think a reassurance of knowing that it's going to be okay, and then knowing that them knowing that there's the options of what can happen. I think my biggest hang up first going out was I didn't necessarily like being too distanced from Jason at first. And now we can kind of have a distance between us, and he can say, yeah, you can go over there and do this, and I'm going to go over here, and I'll be fine with it. But at first I was like, I don't even want to leave your side, because for one, I don't know the country. I don't know how to navigate through here. And a lot of it was I didn't feel like I was physically fit enough to be able to get myself out of a bad situation, or to even, you know, venture out like that on my own. I wasn't sure how I was going to handle that kind of situation. But I think just that the slow, and everybody's going to take, I think women will take to a different, you know, the more comfortable they are. But me, I was a little more timid going out into those kind of situations. So I didn't want to be left alone a lot. And so I wanted to be like my hand held a little bit going into it, and having that, you know, that sense of comfort that, you know, everything will be fine. And I think once I got a little more comfortable being able to read country and to know, you know, where this is going to go or where that's going to go, I got a little more comfortable with the idea of venturing out a little bit on my own.
What are some of the major don'ts? Because like, and one of the things that I noticed was when I went with Mark, Mark came with me on this trip, and I brought my daughter and then my niece. They're the same age. One thing that kind of surprised Mark and I was all of a sudden the things that we just took for granted, like peeing in camp and like
it's completely different.
Changing our clothes and just you know, just all of a sudden we were like, wait, I gotta find a spot, and my daughter needs a spot, and wait, don't come in here, I'm blah, 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 you know, inside the tent. And it was like, all of a sudden, that was just like a whole dynamic that I had never, ever really dealt with.
Yeah. I think for me, I'm used to it enough now. I hang out with guys enough, and I'm in the wilderness enough with men that I know that I'm like, hey, I'm peeing, look away kind of thing. But I think for some men, they'll just be like, it's different, especially if they're not used to it. So if you're not used to having to, like, you know, because sometimes you're in small quarters, you can't venture out to do that. You're like, okay, well, I need you to look away and like just pretend like you don't even know what's happening right now, kind of thing. And guys will usually pick up pretty quick. But I think just being sensitive to the fact that things are different, and you know, the having to change, especially in the tent. You know, like you have to change your clothes in the tent, or you know, use the bathroom differently. You know, I think with your daughters, even like, you know, being like, well, over there behind that tree is probably a good spot, would probably make them a little more comfortable with the fact that they are around other people, and the fact that like it's made a more comfortable situation. But it's definitely a thing where like you feel kind of uncomfortable when you don't know the people that you're around and the people that you're dealing with, because you're like, well, I need to change now, and I need to, you know, I need to go use the bathroom now, and I need to.
I tried really hard to just make sure that, like my daughter, she just hangs out with me all the time. And so, we're really close. And so she could just give me a hard time or tell me to look the other direction. And it wasn't too bad. But it was a little more difficult with Mark there because he's not her dad,
Yeah.
Yeah. But taking it slow, that was something that I've watched Anthony, my buddy Anthony, take his kids, and so I learned about a lot of things not to do with Anthony. Yeah. Actually, Anthony has done a really good job of taking his kids out. He also is really driven to see them be successful. So, and by successful, I mean like actually harvest an animal. And so, I tried really hard this year, like when my daughter had a shot opportunity, to just be really calm and not get too excited and not push her too hard.
Yeah.
And let her just take the shot if she wants to take the shot.
I think that's the biggest thing is kind of letting either women or kids make their own decision on when and what and how. But I think, like for me, I was driven enough to make the shot and to do it. But I think if it's your first animal, that's kind of when you're not sure. Because my first animal, like I sat there and I wasn't sure when to take the shot. And I kind of just decided that now is the time and I'm going to do it right now. But I think just having not quite feeling comfortable with what you're doing and the situation isn't quite comfortable. And especially if you have, you said, being calm about it. If you're not calm about it, especially for the person that's nervous anyways, it's not going to help them make that decision to make the shot. And it's not going to help, probably not going to help them make a good shot on the animal.
Okay. So I lied. I got more questions.
Okay, go for it.
What is your favorite gear? Like,
my favorite gear.
Yeah, as you've been out hunting and stuff, and I think it's more like, maybe I'm wrong, but I think that with women, like, there's certain things that they like to have, whereas a guy's like, I'll live with this, or I'll wear this jacket. It doesn't. I don't care. Or I this will do, or that'll do.
Yeah,
I feel like with my daughter, it's like, no, there are some specific things that must come on the trip, or this is not going to be a good trip. I mean, is it? Definitely. So what gear have you come across that is just like comfort gear, or gear that is make it break it for you? Things that maybe somebody told you, Sadie, you don't need blah blah blah, and then you get up there and you're like, the hell, I didn't need that. I absolutely, I could kill that person right now.
Yeah, There's two pieces of gear, honestly, that have changed my life. It's trekking poles, for one. Okay. I completely have changed my life. I don't know how to hike without trekking poles anymore. It's kind of sad and it's bad.
I'm absolutely with you. I don't
changed my life.
Whenever I see somebody hiking without trekking poles, I think amateur. Something is wrong. Like, what the heck? Like, I use them 99% of the time.
Yeah,
it's just,
and I can go.
They're efficient.
Further. Yeah, it is extremely efficient, and I found that just everything changes with them. So trekking poles, and the new thing for me is a down jacket. Yeah. I can't go anywhere.
You and we're like the same page
oh my gosh.
here.
It's just it's something you got to do.
It's like wearing a sleeping bag, and I like them to be super thick, like ridiculously. I like this down vest actually, with another down jacket under it if I need to, like a full length sleeve one, but a light skinny one.
Yeah,
I like both.
Yeah. And they do make those like bodysuit sleeping bags. I think you should get one of those.
I just talked to Aaron Snyder about some of that today. I like warm, cozy down. I love it.
No, for sure.
And I do get pretty cold. Like, I don't know what it is, but I can handle 110 degrees. I can handle desert heat. You give it to me. We'll go to the CrossFit gym here, and there's no cooling or anything, and it's just in this warehouse, and everybody's dropping like flies, and I can handle heat, man. Heat just doesn't faze me. But the cold shuts me down, man. I get cold really easy. And I get cranky when I'm cold. Like, I get really angry when I'm cold. And so I don't know what it is. Maybe if I lived in a colder climate.
Cold is like me when I'm tired.
I'd be more adjusted, but I am not. Here, it doesn't get cold, and I don't have to deal with it. It gets wet, but.
Yeah. I think Merino's changed my life too. Merino wool. I like, we went out the other morning. We had like this cold snap here, and we went out. It was 9 degrees out, and I had on I had on 2 layers of merino. I had on a fleece top, or I guess I wear Sitka, so I had on the Traverse top, and then I had on a down vest, and then I had on the Kelvin down jacket, which is the thicker of them, and then I had on the Jetstream jacket over that, and then I have like the full neck gaiter on and beanie. I have 2 pairs of gloves, hand warmers. I have 2 pairs of merino bottoms on. I have the thick pants on. I have 2 pairs of socks on. Like I'm set to go. It's 9 degrees out. I was like, let's do this.
I think that's really important. Like with my daughter, I've tried to make sure she's really comfortable. I remember going hunting with my dad and hating it because my boots were soaking wet because they were junk. My jeans were wet because I was wearing jeans, and freezing the whole day long. And there was nothing fun about that trip,
Yeah.
So with her, I've tried really hard, and same with my wife, to make sure that they're comfortable as much as I can.
I think gear is the biggest thing for that, like especially for women. I have women ask me all the time, why I choose the gear I wear. I wear Sitka, and I choose it because it makes me the most comfortable. I stay warm and I stay dry in it, and that's why everybody usually chooses their gear, especially the people that go on the long hunts and the backpack hunts. And I think the better gear you have, the more comfortable you are, especially for women and kids. If they can have that comfortability, it's going to be a life changer. It's going to be so much better of an experience.
I think once you're really, really addicted to hunting, like good and thoroughly addicted, like cocaine or meth or something.
Like it's all you can think about, basically.
At that point,
and you build antler trees.
Yeah,
that's
exactly. Exactly. You start building antler trees, then you've transcended the normal level of like you can freeze to death and you'll stay there. Like you can have crappy boots and you can have blisters and you'll still hunt. Like the gear not being as good. Because you love hunting so much, but when you're not addicted yet, and you don't have that bug, and you're not really into hunting the way some psychopaths are, then you better be comfortable, or you're gonna be ticked, or you're gonna want to quit. And so that's kind of how I feel. Like if it's a child or an adult or a woman or a new person that I'm taking with a nose ring and and earrings, I better make sure, if I want them to enjoy this activity, that they're comfy, because they haven't got the vision yet of what it's all about. But you can, like, once you have that like passion, you can survive. You'll endure a lot more.
Oh, yeah.
So I try to keep them warm and cozy up until they get the passion for it. Then I can let them struggle. It's like
it's all up to you now. Yeah. And that's what I did too. I mean, I thought I was good, and I thought I was, comfy and everything. And I really learned about boots one trip. And that was a really long 2-day bear hunt that we did. And that ended up being just over 18 miles in 2 days. And boots were a big thing at that point. But comfortability, I mean, like I persevered through. I had the worst blister I ever had, tore off skin the first day, and then still trekked through the next day with it. I actually had a blister under my blister. It was so bad. And I learned about boots that day, but I persevered through it, and I pushed through it because I wanted to do it. I wanted to be there. I wanted to hike. I didn't care at that point. I was like, well, I'm already here. I might as well keep going. Yeah. Where somebody else, that doesn't have that drive, like you were saying, would just be done. They would have called it the minute they felt that blister coming on.
Yep. Well, cool. That's cool. I was curious. For me, down jacket, trekking poles, top of my list of things that I have to go 100% of the time.
Oh, have to.
Aaron's telling me maybe a synthetic down is an option, but I haven't really shopped around. But I just like a good down jacket.
Yeah, and mine's a synthetic down. I have that Prima Loft down, and it's. I love it though because it's super light and you can get it soaked and not have to worry about it.
Yeah, how is it if it gets wet? Is it still really warm?
Oh yeah, definitely. They have a video somewhere floating around now, but basically they take the Prima Loft and they submerge it into water, pull it back out, and it's just still puffy, and it's completely it's not watered down or anything, and it's not just disgusting. Like most down will get, it gets too wet and then it'll just kind of like glob up and get gross, but it'll still keep its warmth. So I think anything with Primaloft in it, sleeping bags, down jackets, whatever else you can get is probably the way to go.
It hasn't been such a problem, but I've been on some hunts where I've had to take the down off because I'm wearing a backpack, and the backpack strap just grinding on your shoulder will wear water through and press water into the down in a way that it generally doesn't if it's just raining. But all day hike with the pack on and getting wet, it just, that pressure from the straps will push through and get me my down wet, and it'd be nice to have something that doesn't do that. So
yeah, definitely.
Well, cool, Sadie. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, no problem.
Sharing your insight, and
I hope we cover everything you wanted to. I know there's so much more we could probably talk about and cover. There's so much more to these topics, and especially women's hunting. But
yeah,
blast.
We'll do it again, especially
for sure.
I planned on going to some of these shoots this summer, and I just need to talk you into coming over to the booth, and we're gonna set them up and chat
it'd be a blast.
All right, sounds
good.
Let's do it. All right, thanks, Sadie. Stay gritty.
Right, yep, no problem.
Okay, bye. All right, friends. Thanks for listening and supporting the podcast. For those of you who have not seen the Full Draw Film Tour this year and want to go, check out their website for their tour schedule. And if you haven't done so, go and subscribe to our YouTube channel or to the Gritty Bowman TV podcast on iTunes or Podbean so you can see all the latest video content we have produced. And be sure to have a look at the new Elk 101 website where you can find our podcast and other great elk hunting content. Thank you for taking the time to leave us your feedback. We really appreciate your sincere support of our show. Finally, let me leave you with this quote by President Theodore Roosevelt, who in 1905 said, "In a civilized and cultivated country, wild animals only continue to exist at all when preserved by sportsmen. The excellent people who protest against all hunting and consider sportsmen as enemies of wildlife are ignorant of the fact that in reality, the genuine sportsman is by all odds the most important factor in keeping the larger and more valuable wild creatures from total extermination." Friends, always take the time to educate those around you about your role as a hunter in preserving the wild creatures of this world. If you don't, who will? As always, good luck on your hunts and stay gritty.
This is Ty Stubblefield, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowman.
Gritty Bowman.